Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast. Alongside Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. This podcast, as usual, brought to you by our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Level, a week later from the last podcast, and 2 more wins in the book for Texas Tech basketball. We'll dive into that ad nauseum. A little college football playoff talk is, depending when you listen to this, it might already be in the past, the champion crowned, but that's also this week. A couple of uniform questions from the audience, a women's basketball recruiting question. You probably know where that one's going. And plenty of basketball thoughts and questions as well. So, Level, how are we doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm cold.
It is cold.
I think everybody's cold. No, it's
in the LBK, but it seems like across the country. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm doing great. I'm about to embark on a place that's a heck of a lot colder. So as at the time that you and I are discussing all these said topics, but as you said, man, anytime you in this league, if you can have a 2-0 week, I mean, that's a hell of a week. And you know, they're going to be hard to come by. All of these games are going to be hard to come by, but I felt like this past week it allowed you to get over the hump a little bit instead of the back and forth, because you're about to embark on a stretch where you need to take advantage, because there's a stretch at the tail end of it that you're like, eesh.
Yeah.
But you're about to go to Cincinnati. You've got TCU and Oklahoma State at home. Those are all 3 winnable. I mean, I would say that you would, man, at the bare minimum, you got to go at least 2-1 in that stretch. But then after that is over, you're looking at a stretch that I think it involves Houston, Baylor,
Yep.
and Arizona. And the Houston and Arizona games
Yikes.
are on the road. And so that's peacock today, feather duster tomorrow, right? That's just, I mean,
I like that one.
yeah. So that you just have to, you better take advantage. And this is what you're seeing is, I think, depending on when you catch teams, they are kind of out of gas, or they're just, because there is no, Grant talked to me about this after the Arizona win, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just didn't think that when you're playing Arizona, both teams are averaging in the 80s. It's a lot of free flowing and hoops and all those things, and it turned out to be like a 40-minute shoving match. And I just wasn't, I guess, ready for the physicality of Arizona of all teams. And he made the point to me, look, the extra conference games. Okay, so you have 20. You didn't have the one warm up before the conference season started, and then there is going to be no break. Nobody has a bye or anything like that.
Right.
So this is going to be a 10-week grind where you get 2 a week and you just get hit over the head. And there's a lot of tricky travel. Okay, and sometimes you just catch a team when they are worn down, and we wondered if that was maybe the case with Arizona, and they're staring at having to go to Oklahoma State right after this one, so they're on their little 5-day trip. Anyway, it's the psychology of the schedule and all those things, but it's just and you're gonna show up and have some issues like that too, where you just don't have it one night, and
Sure.
for whatever reason it doesn't go well. So anyway, but it was that was your biggest win of the year, man. That's really the only time that you've beaten a team that is slated to go to the tournament to this point. That's the reality of it.
So far, things could change. BYU
Yeah.
might end up there. Yeah, it's one of those where you just look and And so, yeah, that's your best resume win at the moment. And both, I mean, depending where you're looking, projected around 7 or 8 seeds at the moment, Arizona and Texas Tech. So you still got a lot of work to do, but you're sitting at 4-2 in this league, a very tough league. And like you said, Level, you've got to win the games that are winnable
Hmm.
in front of you. And right now, you're amidst a 5 game, you're 2 games into a 5 game stretch where you could absolutely go 5-0. Not saying you're going to, but you could go 5-0. And because of what's on the other side of that, need is probably a strong word, but it kind of feels like you need to go 5-0 during that stretch because of what's on the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean it's just, and I would say that some of the winnable games that they're going to be trickier than people think
Oh, sure, sure.
because you're dealing with a lot of first year coaches, and like West Virginia is a lot better than
Yep.
anybody would have thought.
They
And
just beat
luckily,
Iowa State.
oh yeah, and luckily you get them in Lubbock.
Yeah.
They're doing all this without, on paper, theoretically, their best paper, old Javon Small. He's just turned himself into like a first team All Big 12 type player based on what he's done so far. But Oklahoma State with a new coach, and you're just not going to get a lot of quits from certain teams at the tail end. We're like, okay, they're just playing out the string. So that's
Yeah.
the scary part about some of this. But and talking about the game before we get to, I guess, all these
Sure.
questions, but talking about the game in general, I think the best part of it was, look, JT Toppin looked like he didn't have the flu anymore. That was a positive. Is
Yeah.
arguably his best game since maybe, statistically he had a pretty good one against UCF, but it was kind of hollow. It didn't really matter. This was impactful. This was clutch. This was consistent. This won it in many ways,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's maybe his best game in a since November.
Yeah. I think you consider opponent, it's got to be his best game overall.
Yeah. I mean, and he got hurt in late November, early December.
Yeah.
And I think it's been his best game in 6 or 7 weeks, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, he had a really hot first half against Iowa State and then 2 points in the second half and kind of disappeared after the ankle turn and
and
still
wasn't
dealing with
feeling
the
good.
flu. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wasn't feeling good.
So, yeah, but you have Darian Williams go down. He didn't have the greatest of games to begin with, but he goes down in the game. We've seen this plenty of times in the Big 12. Winning slugfest, winning these ugly types of games is part of Big 12 play. The better teams or the good teams in the league find a way to get it done in these games, and that brings us to our first question. Level. Are you con? This one is from Jack. It says, "Are you concerned about the offensive lulls in the last 2 games for Tech?"
I mean, I could, they have not. I think they've earned their right. This is one of the statistically best offenses in the country, field goal percentage and all that. So yeah, they're allowed to get tired, be worn down, and I think they've dealt with I mean, a desperate Kansas State team that's got a lot of size, and that's the problem with your team is that as you dealt with a little bit of the flu and it dealt with a little injury here or there, you're deep, but you're not that deep, and so you're having to stress a few guys,
Yeah,
35 minutes, and I just hope that doesn't catch up to you at some point, because um, I your position size across the board, you're just a bit smaller than everybody. And I think that as you get pushed around and it gets physical, you have a hard time getting as clean a looks as you're used to. That's why what JT did against Arizona was extremely impressive because he's shooting those hook shots over a 7-footer.
yeah,
And that the degree of difficulty there, I mean, insane. And I
that that
I
speaks to
mean,
his athleticism too. Is that he's able to still create those shots over the 7 footer, and he's
yeah, but I mean, it's gonna. All that being said, your lack of just size at some positions, depending on what lineup you have on the floor, it's gonna make it harder to score. I mean, they basically, you're underneath out of bounds plays. Jeff Haxton and I, during the broadcast, we were like, because they did this a lot. That they basically just were like, we're not going to try to run a play here. We just want to inbound it and then play.
Yeah, football
They did,
pass.
yeah, they
Three
did it.
quarters.
They did a lot against Kansas State,
Yeah.
and I just thought, well, I hadn't really seen that, but I think part of it is because you're dealing with so much length on the interior, and there's just not a lot of tricks to be had, so they just kind of punted, or arm punt to
Arm
your
punt.
point,
Yeah,
and just kind of it almost got you one time.
almost.
They played a little DB on you, and somebody made a play on the ball, and you survived to tell the story about it. But it speaks to, I think, your lack of. I think they were like, we'd rather do this than like turn it over.
Yeah.
Let's inbound. So I'm not concerned about it. I think that it's get ready for more rock fights. Okay, get ready for more grind. You're going to deal with another one in Cincinnati. There's going to be some of these games where you just make everything, and there's going to be some of these games where you have a really hard time with everything that is supposed to be easy because you're just tired and you're worn down. And I mean, Chance McMillan and Elijah Hawkins, these dudes are playing like 34, 35
Sure.
minutes a night at the highest of levels in college anyway, and it will start to wear on them, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but 4-2 in the league, you're in a good position, and you just beat one of the undefeateds on
Hmm.
Saturday in Arizona. So, set up pretty well. Um, what have you noticed about before we move on to the rest of the questions? What's the biggest difference on the defensive end? Because it seems like to me, Level, that something, maybe it was just a pure wake up call with the UCF game, but since that UCF game, is it just purely more effort on the defensive end that you're seeing from Tech? Because there's a clear difference there. It hadn't been perfect by any means, but you don't seem to be giving up near as many open threes. You're probably still giving up a few too many looks around the layup, but you're talking about an undersized team like that. Yet in every single win for Texas Tech, the opponents are averaging around 60 points a game scored, and you found a way to to really hold teams down. Like Saturday with Arizona, only 54 points scored for that team that's got a lot of offensive talent. So what's that difference to you? What do you think's clicked on the defensive end?
Well, there's some bullet points here. I think the sense of urgency is certainly, having an edge to you, just playing harder because they didn't have it versus UCF. I think there's been spurts where it just hasn't been good enough to where you're just like, and I even mentioned during the broadcast, there's a few times where you see a guy kind of bending over to pick up a ball. Nothing drives me crazier, man, than like you jump on that thing, man. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a mindset as much as anything. Like the Big 12 is not a league where you bend over and pick up a loose
ever.
ball. No, just pounce on that thing. But it's getting there clearly. And I'll tell you, two guys that are coming off the bench, at least for now, that I think have really elevated your defense in general, and that is Federico is starting to, I think, impact the game more and more on the defensive end.
Sure.
Not perfect, but he played 23 minutes versus Arizona, and he's approaching double double type stuff. But I just think he's altering shots. He had a few blocks, but here's one of the here's, I guess, the lead bullet point. You're watching. I don't want to say like a passing of the torch, but you're kind of watching this happen right in front of you. But Christian Anderson is going to continue to play starters type minutes and
Oh
finish
yeah.
the game. And I don't know if at some point he does become a starter. I don't know if Grant wants to necessarily like shorten his bench or keep it the way it is. But I mean, Christian Anderson is basically taking a lot of Kerwin Walton and Kevin Overton's minutes. And a lot of it, we talk about shot making and all the things that he can do on offense, but I think a lot of this has to do with he's making a lot of the right plays on the defensive end. And it's not like he's some lockdown defender, but I don't think he's a liability. And Kevin is pretty good there, but Kerwin, I think that's what else the changes made is I think Grant admittedly and was hard on himself for it was trying to let guys play through some of these defensive mistakes, whether it was a scouting report mistake or whether it was just getting beat. He tried to let guys play through that, and
Yeah,
he was like, "No more. Like we're not doing this anymore. Like there will be consequences if you
sure.
get beat, and especially on that end of the floor. That's where
Right.
he's really trying to hold himself accountable, and that's why Kerwin, I think, whenever there's a mistake, it's like out he comes. So we'll see. But I mean, if you have Walton struggling and Overton struggling, you're down to six players.
Yeah.
And that's not you can't do that. Kind of,
No. No.
and especially with one is dealing with an ankle or foot issue, and one's had the flu and all this stuff. You just can't. You got to have more. So
All right, so let's see. Back to well, before we get to a couple more questions, level the let's look ahead to the week ahead for Tech. So you got a road trip to Cincinnati, and then you're back home for a very strange thing that something I don't even remember the last time you had a Sunday home game or a Sunday. You don't have Sunday games in the Big 12 that often, but it's becoming more of a norm. There's one that happened yesterday with TCU and Baylor. But uh, you look at this week, Cincinnati and OSU. I say obviously the OSU game, you've got to have that one because it's a home game, no question about it. Cincinnati is a team that maybe had the best non-conference put together of anybody in the Big 12. They continued to win. They got it. I don't know if they ever graced the top 10, but they were as high as number 11 at one point. And then since Big 12 play has started, they've kind of hit a wall. There's still some danger in this team, right? I mean, this is
oh yeah.
still a talented group and maybe a bad matchup for Texas Tech as well.
Yeah, no, I don't. Again, another team with a lot of size, and this is absolutely going to be one of those games. It's just a grind, and we'll see how healthy Darion Williams is going into this game.
Yeah,
In Cincinnati, you're dealing with them where they can, if they get this win over you, it would be their third win in a row in the league, and they're starting to feel really good about themselves. So yeah, there's a lot on the line here, and you got them in Lubbock last year, but it was one of those games where you beat them, but you never really controlled the game. And I'll tell you, statistically, he doesn't show up a ton on offensively. He's a big time rebounder and shot blocker or just altered. But the guy that scares me the most about Cincinnati is a kid named Aziz Bandango, who's like a
mhm.
7-footer that just
Yeah,
causes a lot of problems around the rim and for you and makes it difficult to score. So they have struggled to score in general since Big 12 play started. I mean, Dan Skillings, Lukosius, and I
yeah,
think they've got a lot of their same team back intact from last year, and they slightly tried to tweak it. But Wes Miller, I think, almost had the team of the tournament last year, and then they've had a really good non-conference, but then they lost four in a row to start league play. Now, if you go look at it, none of those are necessarily bad losses, although I guess you could say the one in Manhattan was their bad conference loss, but all the
sure.
other ones are you don't go ooh. But now, granted, the two wins they've just had over Colorado and Arizona State are not any great shakes either on paper. But this is a landmine waiting on you. Yeah, this is a scary one here for you, especially because you've won a couple. It's going to be freezing. I think that the highs in Cincinnati while we're there, like 10 or 12 degrees, and you've never been there. It's a long ways off. So I don't, I think this will be a very difficult game for Texas Tech.
But if you want to stay in that top five in the Big 12 conversation, that sort of thing where you're wanting to be a 5 or 6 seed or better in the NCAA tournament, this is one you really need to try to go get. It's not, vital for that, but it would go a long way to help you. And with that, here's a question. This one comes from Mark. Level, do you still believe that the Big 12 winner will be a 15-win team? If so, do you think Tech has any chance to get to that mark with 2 losses already and 14 games to go?
I don't think Texas Tech has a chance to get there, in my opinion. I think it's just too tough, especially with what you're seeing. I mean, because you still have, think about it, you still have 2 games versus Houston. You got to go to Tucson. You've got Baylor here. You got West Virginia here. I mean, there's some.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, you only at least lose 3 more games here, and you go 15-5, man. Like, whoa.
It would be
Uh,
very impressive.
yes, it would. And I saw, Ken Palm has you kind of projected out to a 13-7 conference record based on.
I think I'd take that right now.
I would too, and run, and you
Yeah.
can't, no takebacks. I would take it and run. It puts you firmly in the NCAA tournament. I think it puts you, and again, depending on what else, but you don't have anything on your non-conference that's going to back you up here.
Right.
There's just not a lot there. You have one of the worst non-conference schedules in the country, and I think Ken Palm had it rated like 331.
Yeah.
And that's the data. That's not my opinion, but it's
Sure.
you know anyway, and that's why I went over Arizona, that the computers love, and the all the formulas and metrics that factor into the net and the Ken Palm and all that. They love Arizona because of some of what they've done. That's why I went over those guys. It's huge, but I do think that the winner of this league can get into the 15, maybe even 16. And I mean that you're talking Houston or Iowa State. Obviously, Houston, as we sit here and talk, is undefeated. Iowa State has the 1 loss. Arizona has the 1 loss. But I mean, unless there's some catastrophic injury,
Yeah.
whatever, and Iowa State's dealing with one, I don't see them losing a bunch of more games in this deal. I just don't.
Those net rankings you speak of, Level, Texas Tech moved up to number 15 with the win.
From
So
19.
So I mean, you're sitting there. The net looks pretty for the committee, but they also do look at things like the strength of schedule overall, strength of record, those sorts of things. So that's where Texas Tech will get knocked. Okay. Um, so moving on from basketball a little bit, here's a different semi-random question. Um, this one comes from Jason. It says, "What are Tech's chances to land Aliyah Chavez for women's basketball?" Obviously,
Who is this?
this one's from Jason.
No, no. Who are they asking
Oh,
about?
who is she? Never heard of her. The number one player in
I
the
mean,
country.
I think there's a lot of people that feel pretty strongly that Tech is in a good spot here. This is all going to put Krista Gerlich in a weird. Just me speaking frank
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Who's Frank? I um, because if you land this player, a lot of excitement and all that, and then what happens once you get her, and there's a lot of pressure to get her. She's right here in your own backyard and all that. And you've been able to go across the street essentially and go to her games and recruit her for multiple years and all these things. If you don't get her, it's very harmful PR thing.
yeah.
And you can get over that. I mean, like the Micah Hudson stuff, right? That everybody,
Seems like that's gone
all,
away pretty fast.
a lot of comedians out there, a lot of people that anti-Red Raider fans poking fun, a lot of your own going, how did we screw this up and all that stuff, and then
Sure.
you kind of see that there's always more to the story. And I didn't see the same. You don't see the same energy when it
No,
on the back end.
never do.
Yeah. So anyway, I tend to think if you were asking me, I would say you're the favorite. I think Texas is certainly in there. I think LSU is as well. I think at one point South Carolina. I don't know what has been reported. This is what my information tells me.
Hmm.
And I just wouldn't rule out anything here. There will be a lofty collective,
Which how
deal
does that all
made.
that work with the whole
Yeah,
the
because
new
you
revenue
you
sharing, all
could get
that?
in right under the gun, and it would just be one of those things where,
You
I mean,
do it right before it all
Grant and
goes.
company can do the same, and this is the way everybody's going to operate. You've got one last. It's kind of like what football just did. So
Before July
there
1,
may
right?
be there may need to be some collective money paid way ahead of time or before certain dates, like before seasons even come close to starting.
Right.
But you could secure players this way, and I think that and again, we'll see if this house settlement is in fact what we think it is, and it gets approved on time, and if there's any tweaks because you've got the Title IX stuff coming out
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So anyway, there you go.
So real quick, while you're there, the Title IX stuff, is there any legs to that? Or, I mean, they do use the word proportionally. Is that proportionally to what those schools or those sports make for the school? Or, I mean, what do you think there's any legs to Title IX slowing this whole revenue sharing down?
Well, I mean, it was the sexy report at the end of the last week, like coming out like, whoa, stop sign, like throw up King's
Yeah,
X, like, hey, everybody's got all these plans, and hey, this judge has ruled, or this memo in the court system has
sure.
indicated that, all that stuff. I think that could change in a matter of days, depending on who the Department of Education is, with the new administration being,
Very true.
inaugurated this week and all that
Yep.
stuff, and then that alters the course there. I think that either way, you're probably looking at more litigation, just because if there were to be, again, this is revenue sharing, and I think Title IX had to do with, I think, access and scholarships, and I think everything does remain equitable there. But revenue sharing, I don't know how, maybe I'm missing some major points, but Texas Tech has chosen to share the revenue with who brings in the revenue. The end. I mean, like, there's no tricky math or anything. It's like, okay, you make the money, you get the money, and that's usually the way business works. So I don't know how this will play out. I don't really anticipate that affecting the what we have thought would play out, I guess, is my guess.
Yeah.
But again, I think we need to be prepared for some twists and turns until we get to ultimately next fall, with the off season, and you've got courts dealing with this house case, all that mess, and you've got the playoff system being tweaked. I mean, that this is gonna, because there won't be a ton of realignment, but this is now the new off-season topic of where you try to you try to follow what's what. I mean, heck, we just changed we're about to change the portal window,
Yep.
and like kind of go, okay, we got used to one thing, and now it's like that didn't even last for but one year.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna do something different there. So all things are on the table.
All right, two uniform questions, Level. You know how people love their uniforms. Uh, First one is basketball related. This one comes from Kevin. It says, "Are the three Tech basketball uniforms the only three we'll see this year, or is there a special uniform coming at any point?" And then old Greg from Twitter asks, "Will Mahomes be designing a new uniform combo every year for football, or was the galvanized uniform the only one? I remember rumors of him doing more, but don't think there was everything or ever anything confirmed."
I don't know if you're. I guess I think that your red, white, and black basketball unis are the only ones you've got. I don't think there's like some special edition or some throwback. I don't believe. I don't know if there's a gray one or a throwback or whatever. But I think that's it. Okay, now but I do think that Mahomes was the question. Is he going to design another one for next year or something? Is
Yeah,
that what was
will there
asked?
be a new one every year is what the question was.
Okay, now the devil's in the details. I don't know if that is true. There will be new ones. I don't know if this is like an every other year, but you may get something different next year. But I don't know if you can anticipate something brand new every single year along those lines. Maybe that is the case, but I don't think so. And at some point, do you, I guess Oregon really hasn't, but at some point, do you just run out of ideas? How can we
I was about to
spin
say
this?
Oregon does new
Yeah, how
uniform
how
every
can we
single
spin this
game.
record? Yeah, I know.
So yeah, I mean, I guess, and what do they do with the gladiator logo too? Does that become more of the normal thing? Because they wore it, I think, on the white uniforms one game this season.
Uh-huh.
I want to say the Iowa State game. Can't remember for sure which one it was, but wore that on the road one time, and then wore the galvanized ones. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought there was mention, and I thought there was public mention of a baseball uniform as well. I think they talked about that, and I don't know if that's going into play this year, but I guess with Mahomes' connections to baseball, that there will be a baseball alternate at some
Well,
point.
soccer was
Soccer too.
definitely involved,
Okay.
yeah, because of Pat's wife and all that
Okay.
stuff. Yeah,
So
I don't know if we have the full
yeah,
details of all of those kinds of things, but I used to be like a lot of these folks, and we're caught up into a lot of the uniform stuff. I probably
threads.
don't. Well, yeah, I don't. I just I'm on record as saying like your Under Armour throwbacks were some of the cleanest, best
There we
ones, and
go.
I thought the your normal base uniforms this year were just
Agreed. Yep.
phenomenal. I thought they were like so smooth and kind of retro-y, kind of clean. If that not a lot going on. I love the stripe down the helmet. I thought that was a really clean look to it, and yeah. So and so much of this is kind of what Pat wants.
Sure.
I mean, if he really wants to say this is what I want to do, then guess what? That's
Then Adidas listens to the best player on earth.
that's what'll get done.
That's how
Yeah.
that works. Okay, so level at the time we record this and release it, the college football playoff national championship has not happened. When you're listening, it may have already happened. But has the college football playoff gone the 12 team playoff first year we're in it? Has it gone as you expected, hoped? What's been your thoughts on the 12 team playoff so far as just entertainment value or how it's gone down?
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely enjoyed. I've watched pretty much every game that I could.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll be in a position to watch the title game on Monday night because I'll be in Cincinnati with the hoops team, and I don't know where we will be and all that
sure,
stuff.
sure.
But I've thoroughly enjoyed that first round. I thoroughly enjoyed like your New Year's Eve, New Year's
Hmm.
Day, like quarterfinal type games. Um, I. I think that what's interesting is now there's all this speculation about, well, let's tweak the buys and who gets the buys, and the conference championship game
Right,
winners shouldn't be. and
guaranteed.
and
Yeah,
yet we're sitting here, and I guess there's some money attached to that. Like if you get a buy, you automatically get money, or your league gets money or whatever. But the four teams that had buys went 0-4. So
they
that's
did.
what is that is what's weird to me. I wasn't
And
probably anticipating that, I guess.
yeah,
But I just think that whether it's after this next cycle is over, they can at that point look at it. I think you'll grow to 14. I really do. And I think that this offseason you'll see the groundwork laid for more automatic bids, and I think that they threw up the trial balloon last year, and I think you kind of scoffed, not you personally, but I think that you as a league or some of
Big
the other
12.
leagues were
Yeah,
like, man, don't be. But I think that you're going to get back to more discussion about, SEC and Big Ten getting four automatic bids, the Big 12 and ACC getting two automatic bids. And at this point, I'd probably say if you grow up to 14, I would probably, I don't know what the dollars are attached, but I think you take it. I just don't know if your situation is going to get any better
yeah,
at
yeah.
all. And
Or
I
stars have to align so much for you to get two
yes,
teams in right now.
exactly. And you
Like
have
you,
everything working against you, and you now. There's probably never going to be a chance where you get three in and you get like one of those, extras. But if you're locking me into two out of the 16, make it every single year. I probably, and again, I need to see what all that comes with and
Sure,
all the
sure.
dynamics and all that stuff. But I think that's eventually
Yeah.
the way this will go. And I hate to like give in. I'm just trying to be realistic here because there are things written into the agreement now to where the SEC and the Big Ten after this next year they don't have to have unanimous approval on anything that gets approved. They're kind
Right.
of going to run the deal, and so if that is there to be had, I think you ought to grab it and run. And I love Brett Yormark, and he may fight and he may say the wrong or right things and not and like, but it may be hollow. And if you can lock yourself into a two bid situation, I would
Yep.
probably look long and hard at it.
So, rooting interest and champion, are they the same for you in the championship game? Who are you pulling
This
for?
is a matchup, man. I really don't care.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really dislike or like. I mean, I know all the stuff that's going on with Ohio State, and it's just crazy to me because I think what is true here is that, and we need to remember this as we live through our own season next year
Yeah.
with some expectations. These are
Sure.
two teams. These are two teams. I think I've said this to you before, but these are two teams that suffered very embarrassing losses on their home field and were booed extremely loudly by their own home fans. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
unleashed by their own home crowd. And here they are at the top of the mountain trying to be the last one standing. And I think that part is crazy because the Northern Illinois win and then Notre Dame, or in South Bend, and then Notre Dame hasn't lost since. And then obviously we know what happened with the Michigan game and the flag planting thing at Ohio State, and you thought, okay, they might fire Ryan Day like right now, and then here they are
Yeah.
about to try to win the whole deal. I think
And neither
everybody
of these
loves.
teams are in this playoff in the former years in the 14 playoff.
I know, and that's what's fun about it. I
Yep.
think this playoff is tailor made for a program like a Penn State too.
Yeah.
That's always just on the outside. And they didn't make as much noise as they probably wanted to. They did make it to the Final Four. However, this is tailor made for those programs that have been just knocking on the
Sure.
door, and just can't get access because you're just not quite there. And now you do have access. So I mean, I tend to think Ohio State wins this game if you're asking me what that is, but I'm not like rooting for anybody. And
Yeah.
if I don't get to see the whole thing, it won't necessarily bother me just
Okay.
because I'm not rooting strongly for or against. I just think Ohio State is extremely talented. I mean, heck, the best player in college football, no shot at Travis Hunter or anything, is that receiver for Ohio State. Granted, Texas shut him down, which was crazy. But and I've actually seen a mock draft that has the Cowboys taking one of those two Ohio State running backs, like in the second or third round. So there's some different
Yeah.
interests there to pay attention to.
Well, Level, appreciate it. Enjoy Cincinnati. Eat some chili with some spaghetti, and we'll talk to you next week, man.
I do know on Monday night we are going to a barbecue joint, so we'll see how that goes. Cincinnati
Okay.
barbecue. Who would have thought? But
Who
hey, man,
knows?
appreciate it. We'll talk to you next time, Woodman.
He's Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. It's been the Ask Level podcast brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.